The courthouse steps in downtown Chicago were always crowded, lawyers hurrying to hearings, reporters chasing headlines, and people clinging to hope that justice still meant something. Daniel Moore, a top defense attorney in his mid-30s, moved through the chaos like a man who owned it. His suit was sharp, his tie perfect, and his phone was glued to his ear as he barked into his Bluetooth headset. "Tell the client I'll settle for nothing under $2 million, he said briskly. "And get me the new deposition by tomorrow morning. I don't care how late you stay." He ended the call with a sigh and adjusted his cufflinks, admiring his reflection in the glass doors. Success, after all, was everything. As he turned to head down the steps, a voice stopped him. "Spare some change, sir?" Daniel looked down. Sitting near the courthouse wall was a homeless man, mid-50s, beard streaked with gray, wearing a worn military jacket. His hands trembled slightly as he held out a small paper cup. Daniel grimaced. "Sorry, man. I don't do handouts." The man looked up with tired blue eyes. "Not asking for charity. Just a little kindness." Daniel gave a tight smile. "Kindness doesn't pay bills." And with that, he walked away. The man nodded slowly, as if he'd heard it before. "You were right," he murmured. "But one day, you'll wish it did." That night, Daniel came home to his penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. His daughter, Sophie, 10 years old, ran to him the second he opened the door. "Daddy!" she squealed. "You were home early." He smiled, lifting her into his arms. "Just for tonight, kiddo." His ex-wife, Laura, appeared in the hallway, arms crossed. "Early? It's past 8. Daniel ignored her tone. "How's my girl been?" Sophie grinned. "We made brownies. I saved you the biggest one." He ruffled her hair. "You always do." For a moment, everything felt perfect, warm light, laughter, family. But Daniel's phone buzzed again, and reality crept back in. "Sorry, sweetheart," he said, setting Sophie down. "Dad's gotta take this." As he walked into his office, Laura shook her head. "She misses you, Daniel. She doesn't care about your cases, she just wants you." He didn't respond. He was already on the call. The next morning, Daniel took his usual route to work, coffee in hand, briefcase in the other, when he saw the same homeless man sitting in the same spot outside the courthouse. This time, the man wasn't asking for change. He was staring at a small, faded photo in his hand. Daniel glanced at it as he passed, a young soldier in uniform, smiling beside a woman and a baby. He hesitated for half a second, then kept walking. That afternoon, in court, Daniel destroyed another witness on the stand. The jury loved him. His client, a wealthy real estate mogul, smiled smugly from the defense table. But as Daniel spoke, his mind kept flicking back to those tired blue eyes outside. There was something in them, something he couldn't shake. Maybe it was the soldier's photo. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe it was the nagging thought that for all his success, he'd lost the one thing that man still had, humanity. That night, as Daniel tucked Sophie into bed, she asked softly, "Daddy, do you help people?" He smiled automatically. "That's my job, honey. I help people in court." She frowned. "No, I mean like people who don't have homes. There's a man outside my school who asks for food sometimes. Mommy says he's a veteran." Daniel froze. "A veteran?" "Yeah," she said. "He's nice. He tells jokes. His name's Frank." The name hit him like a whisper from fate. "Frank," he repeated quietly. Sophie nodded, eyes already closing. "He said heroes don't wear capes. They wear scars." Daniel sat beside her bed long after she fell asleep, her words echoing in his head. And for the first time in years, the confident lawyer didn't feel powerful. He felt small. The next morning, he walked past the courthouse steps again. Frank wasn't there. The space where he usually sat was empty, just an old paper cup lying on the ground. Daniel bent down and picked it up, staring at it. He didn't know why, but he felt a chill. He had no idea that within 48 hours, the same man he'd ignored, the homeless veteran he'd brushed aside, would be the one standing between his daughter and a nightmare he couldn't buy his way out of. The next 2 days blurred together for Daniel Moore, a carousel of client meetings, angry phone calls, and headlines about his latest courtroom victory. He didn't have time to think about Frank, the homeless veteran on the courthouse steps. He didn't even notice that the man hadn't shown up since. Then came the call that shattered everything. It was Friday evening. Daniel was wrapping up paperwork when his phone buzzed with Laura's name. He answered with a sigh. "What now, Laura? I told you I'll pick Sophie up Sunday." Her voice was shaking. "Daniel. Sophie's gone." He froze. "What do you mean gone?" "She was supposed to walk home from school with her friend, but she never showed up. I've called everyone, her friends, her teacher, the police." Daniel's chair scraped back as he stood, heart pounding. "I'm on my way." By the time he reached Laura's house, patrol cars lined the street. Flashing lights reflected off the windows, casting red and blue shadows across the living room walls. A police officer, Detective Harris, was speaking with Laura when Daniel burst through the door. "Where's my daughter?" he demanded. Harris turned calmly. "Mr. Moore, we're doing everything we can. We've got officers searching the nearby blocks and canvassing." "That's not good enough," Daniel snapped. "You need to." "Daniel," Laura interrupted, tears streaming. "Please. Just listen." Harris handed him a printout. "We reviewed security footage from the street near Sophie's school. She left the gates around 3:15. A man approached her, older, beard, military jacket." Daniel's breath caught. "Military jacket?" Harris nodded. "We think he's one of the local homeless vets. She seemed to know him. She talked to him, then walked with him down Oak Street." Laura covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. "Frank." Within the hour, Daniel was downtown again, retracing every street around the courthouse. He shouted Frank's name at every corner, asked every street vendor, every officer, every stranger. No one had seen him. The empty space near the courthouse wall looked colder than ever. Then, from the corner of his eye, Daniel spotted something in the alley beside it, a torn paper cup, like the one Frank always used. Inside was a folded piece of newspaper, weighted down with a coin. Daniel unfolded it and saw a message scrawled in shaky handwriting. "She's safe. Don't call the police. You'll understand soon." His blood ran cold. He handed the note to Harris an hour later, pacing furiously in the precinct. "This man took my daughter. He's dangerous." Harris read the message carefully. "Or he's trying to protect her." Daniel glared. "From what?" "Maybe from something you don't see," the detective said quietly. Hours passed with no leads. It wasn't until midnight that Daniel's phone buzzed again, an unknown number. He answered instantly. "Sophie?" A calm, gravelly voice replied, "She's fine, counselor." Daniel's heart nearly stopped. "Frank?" "That's right." "Where is she?" Daniel demanded. "What did you do to my daughter?" Frank's voice stayed level. "She's somewhere safe. You'll see her soon, but first, you need to listen." "Listen? You kidnapped my child." "No," Frank said firmly. "I saved her." Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. "What are you talking about?" "There were two men following her after school," Frank said. "They've been hanging around that park for days. I noticed them. When they tried to grab her, I stepped in. She was scared, so I took her to a shelter I know. Somewhere clean, somewhere safe." Daniel's mind raced. "You expect me to believe that?" "You don't have to," Frank said quietly. "But she's alive because I was there, not because of you." Daniel gripped the phone tighter. "Let me talk to her." There was silence for a moment, then Sophie's small voice came through, trembling but steady. "Daddy?" Daniel nearly collapsed. "Sweetheart. Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay. Mr. Frank helped me. He stopped those bad men." Tears welled in Daniel's eyes. "I'm coming to get you right now." "Not yet," Frank said firmly. "The police will just make this worse. They'll scare off the men who did it. Let me handle it first." Daniel's tone turned cold. "You're a homeless vet, not a hero." Frank's reply was quiet but cutting. "Maybe not. But right now, I'm the only one who actually saw her." Then the line went dead. Daniel stood frozen, the phone shaking in his hand. Every instinct told him to call the police, to mobilize every resource he had. But another voice, smaller, unfamiliar, whispered that maybe Frank was telling the truth. Maybe the man he dismissed as worthless was the only one who cared enough to act when he couldn't. Either way, he had no choice. He was going to find Frank and his daughter, no matter what it took. The next morning, Daniel Moore was a wreck. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, just paced his apartment, replaying the call in his head. Every word, every breath. "She's fine. You'll understand soon." Frank's voice haunted him. By sunrise, he'd made up his mind. He couldn't sit around waiting for the police. He was going to find this man himself. He drove through the city's forgotten corners, underpasses, shelters, abandoned buildings, anywhere Frank might have gone. He asked every person he passed, flashing Sophie's photo like a badge. Most shook their heads. A few just stared, wary of a man in a $1,000 suit asking questions in their world. Finally, behind an old church near the river, Daniel spotted a small crowd gathered around a volunteer truck serving breakfast. He pulled over, got out, and scanned the faces, then froze. There, sitting quietly at the end of the line, was Frank. The same army jacket. The same tired eyes. But this time, he wasn't holding a cup, he was holding Sophie's pink backpack. Daniel's heart lurched. He stormed across the lot, grabbing Frank by the collar. "Where is she?" he shouted. The crowd turned instantly, volunteers yelling for him to stop. Frank didn't fight back. He just looked him dead in the eye and said calmly, "She's safe." Daniel shoved him harder. "You tell me where my daughter is, right now." "I already told you," Frank said, voice steady. "The shelter on Greenpoint Avenue. 3rd floor. Ask for Ruth. She's watching her." Daniel froze. You actually." Frank nodded. "She's safe. Warm. Ate breakfast an hour ago. You can go get her." Daniel blinked, confusion and relief clashing all at once. "Why didn't you bring her back? Why not call me again?" "Because you wouldn't have listened," Frank said. "You only listen when you're scared." The words hit Daniel like a punch. When Daniel and the police arrived at the Greenpoint shelter 20 minutes later, Sophie ran straight into his arms. "Daddy!" she cried. He held her tight, tears spilling freely this time. "I've got you, baby. I've got you." She was safe, shaken but unharmed. Ruth, the shelter worker, confirmed everything. She was terrified when Frank brought her in, Ruth explained. Said 2 men tried to grab her near the park. Frank fought one off, scared the other away. He stayed with her all night. Never left her side. Daniel turned pale. "He fought them?" Ruth nodded. "He's ex-military. Said he's seen worse." Daniel glanced out the window, where Frank sat on the curb, his jacket torn, a faint bruise on his jaw. Something inside him cracked. He walked outside slowly, the chaos around him fading into background noise. Frank looked up as he approached. "She okay?" he asked. Daniel nodded. "Thanks to you." Frank gave a small, tired smile. "Good. That's all that matters." Daniel hesitated, then sat down beside him on the curb, something he never imagined doing. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "Why help her? After the way I treated you?" Frank shrugged. "Didn't do it for you. Did it because it was right." Daniel studied him. "You could have been hurt. You already were." Frank chuckled dryly. "I've been hurt worse. I didn't survive 2 tours just to watch another kid get taken." The words landed heavy. For the first time, Daniel noticed the faded tattoo on Frank's wrist, a military unit insignia, and the scar running along his forearm. "Who were those men?" Daniel asked. Frank's eyes darkened. "Traffickers. They target school routes. I've seen them before. I've been watching that park for weeks, waiting for the cops to notice. They never do." Daniel swallowed hard. "And you noticed my daughter." "I notice everyone," Frank said. "That's what happens when the world stops noticing you." The silence between them stretched. Daniel felt the weight of his own hypocrisy pressing on his chest, all the times he'd walked past Frank without a word, all the times he'd assumed his suit made him more valuable. Finally, he spoke. "You saved her life, Frank. And I treated you like you didn't have one." Frank shook his head. "You just forgot. Most people do. But you remember now." Daniel nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, not for cash this time, but for a business card. You shouldn't be on the streets. Let me help you. A job, a place to stay, whatever you need. Frank smiled faintly. Appreciate it. But I don't want charity. This isn't charity, Daniel said firmly. It's gratitude. You saved my family. Frank looked at him for a long moment, then accepted the card. All right, counselor. Maybe we'll call it even. They shook hands, one clean, one rough, but equal in strength. That night, as Daniel tucked Sophie into bed, she whispered, Mr. Frank's a hero, isn't he? Daniel smiled sadly. Yeah, sweetheart. He's the kind of hero people forget about, until they need one. As he turned off the light, he made himself a silent promise, to never forget again. Because sometimes, the people we overlook are the ones keeping us safe. The following week, the story spread across Chicago like wildfire. Homeless veteran saves lawyer's daughter from abduction. The newspapers loved it, the irony, the humanity, the twist of fate. But for Daniel Moore, it wasn't a headline. It was a reckoning. He couldn't stop thinking about Frank, about the cold night on the curb, the bruises on his face, the quiet dignity in his voice. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt since before law school: purpose. On Monday morning, Daniel walked into his firm's marble lobby, past the same security guards and secretaries who always greeted him with forced smiles. But this time, he didn't head for his corner office. He walked straight into the managing partner's room. Richard, he said, dropping a folder on the desk, I'm taking a leave of absence. Richard blinked. You're what? I'm stepping away for a while. To do what? You're on track for partner, Daniel. You can't just. Daniel smiled faintly. I need to make things right. With someone I should have seen a long time ago. Over the next few days, he worked tirelessly, not in courtrooms, but in city offices and veteran centers. He used every connection, every favor, every ounce of influence he had built over his career. When he found Frank again, the veteran was back at the shelter, sweeping floors to earn his breakfast. Daniel stepped inside, holding an envelope. Frank, I've got something for you. Frank looked up. If it's money, I told you. It's not money, Daniel interrupted. He handed him the envelope. It's a job offer. Maintenance supervisor at the courthouse. You'd get housing, full benefits, and you'd be working with the same people who used to walk past you. People who need to see who you really are. Frank stared at him, stunned. You did this? Daniel nodded. You saved my daughter's life. The least I can do is help you rebuild yours. For a long moment, Frank said nothing. Then his voice broke slightly. You really don't give up, do you, counselor? Daniel smiled. Guess I finally learned persistence can be used for something good. Frank chuckled softly. All right. I'll take it. But only if you promise me one thing. What's that? Stop looking down when you walk past people. You might miss another one like me. Daniel laughed quietly. Deal. They shook hands again, no suits, no pretense. Just respect. A week later, the courthouse held a small ceremony to recognize Frank's heroism. Reporters filled the steps, cameras flashing. The same steps where Daniel had once ignored him. Frank stood at the podium in a clean uniform, his shoulders straight, a small metal pin to his chest. Sophie sat in the front row, grinning ear to ear, holding a handmade sign that read, "Thank you, Mr. Frank." When it was Daniel's turn to speak, he stepped forward, heart heavy with humility. Every day, we walk past people without seeing them, he began. We assume their worth based on what they wear, where they live, or what they can give us. I did that once, and it nearly cost me everything. He paused, glancing toward Frank. This man, Daniel continued, voice steady, reminded me that greatness isn't measured in wealth or status. It's measured in courage, compassion, and the willingness to act when no one else will. The crowd erupted in applause. Frank simply nodded, eyes glistening, a quiet smile on his face. After the ceremony, as the cameras died down, Frank approached Daniel and Sophie. Looks like you two are my PR team now, he joked. Sophie giggled. Mom says you're famous. Frank laughed. Tell your mom fame doesn't buy much, but friends do. Daniel looked at him seriously. You are not just a friend, Frank. You're family now. Frank's expression softened. Careful, counselor. You'll make me believe in people again. Maybe that's the point, Daniel said quietly. You made me believe first. Months later, Frank's photo hung in the courthouse lobby, not as a charity case, but as a hero. And Daniel, now volunteering weekly at the same shelter where they'd met, often found himself looking around at faces he used to ignore. Because now, he saw them. Really saw them. And every time he did, he thought of a man in a faded army jacket who once said, "You only listen when you're scared." Now, Daniel listened, not out of fear, but gratitude.